If you have just gotten here, if you could please check in with the MICA app, we're going to get started in a minute or two. Okay, so it's 2:31, and I know people are still going to be coming in, but we obviously have a lot to cover today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I am going to remind people one more time to please check in on the MICA app. We'll also show the QR code at the end, just so that we can get an idea of who's here. So, welcome to the spring 2023 town hall. I know there's some significant reasons people are here that we need to talk about, but there's some housekeeping we need to get through first. I'm Quinn Spence. I'm the Director of Shared Governance of the undergraduate SVA. We are joined by Megan, our Director of Academic Affairs, Christina, our Director of Design, Sophia, our Director of Transitions, and Nova, our Director of Student Life. We also have some administrators with us today. We have Tiffany, who's the interim provost, Colette, who's the interim vice provost, Mike, our VP of Student Affairs, and Sammy Hoy will be here in a few minutes. So, oh, and I also see Martin, the VP of Business. So we have some administrators with us today to help answer questions. And I'm just going to go over some community agreements. We're going to have a Q&A section, and we need to keep things civil. Boundaries, be appropriate. We're not attacking people personally. We're going to have someone keeping time, so please be respectful of time. We want to get everyone out as soon as close to 4 as possible for classes. Please don't speak over people. Please do not name names, cast personal blame, etc. Yeah. And use I statements. Please don't speak for others. I'm going to run real quick through some updates, what SVA has been up to this past semester. For those who are maybe less familiar, we take in student feedback and do our best to advocate for what students want to see on campus. We are the official governing body of students on campus. So we have been working with the MICA app to sort of address complaints about harassment and cyberbullying, and also just general cultural issues. We have reviewed the policy, which is relatively strong, but we're always interested in feedback on new ways to encourage appropriate interaction on the MICA app. And keep an eye out as new content is going to be coming out soon addressing issues of cyberbullying, respect of free speech and censorship, and how we address violations on the MICA app. We also were really excited to bring back HMART shuttles this semester. That was a really big topic that people were concerned about. So now we will have HMART shuttles running 12 to 5 every other week from Founders Green, on weeks alternating with the Target shuttle. Check out the shopping shuttle page on MICA's website for detailed scheduling and information. We are working with Parkhurst to address some complaints about dining and concerns. We've already run a table in collaboration with Parkhurst to gather feedback. We collected dozens of forms. We were really excited to deliver this feedback straight to Corey Lover, the Parkhurst general manager. And we really want to host another table soon. But in the meantime, please feel free to fill out surveys that can be found at any of the dining locations, Glace, Doris, or Meyerhoff. Those should be available either sitting out or upon request if you have any feedback to provide. They are always open to that. Or you can email Corey C. Lover at parkhurstdining.com. Final update, we now have a student representative serving on the President's Council. So that means someone from SVA, me actually, is weekly sitting in on administrative meetings, getting updates about different operational changes that are occurring on campus, provide feedback on those changes based on student feedback, events, concerns brought up by students. This is a huge step for student representation on campus. This is only SVA's second year as an officially recognized governing body on campus. And it's, and it is not common for this sort of arrangement to be made. With all of that being said, SVA is always interested in feedback, always interested in engagement, and we want to hear from students about feedback, concerns, because those can be brought straight to the President's Council and the Vice Presidents at these weekly meetings. Is Sammy here yet? Okay. So when Sammy arrives, I'm going to have to keep you all entertained, I guess, until then. But we are going to be having Sammy give a summary of the state of MICA address that occurred this morning, which I know is really one of the reasons everyone's here. Guys, what should I talk about until then? You know, not awesome. If you could imagine that. Yes, in the back. Yeah. Yeah, here, wait, let me relay that over the mic. So, oh, we have a mic. Amazing. This is good stuff.
Hi. I can do it. Oh. Yeah, okay. Hi. I'm Nova, SVA Director of Student Life. We have a bunch of committees, 4 to be exact, sustainability, accessibility, culture and identity, and student workers.
Oh yeah.
We would love if you want to get involved with any of those. Please feel free to email SVA or email me specifically. My email is out on the MICA app. And we do meetings to kind of go over what's going on and all of that. And Sammy Hoy is here, so I'm going to stop talking. But
here is Sammy Hoy.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Yes, thank you. And sorry, today's a very busy day, so I was late coming. So thank you so much. I think I've been asked by Gwen and SVA to share with you kind of a very, very quick summary of the State of MICA address I gave to faculty and staff this morning right before noon, so that students would also be just transparently know what's happening at MICA, and then we can facilitate conversations, information sessions kind of later on. And Quinn was also briefed yesterday morning, and so they have been very, very thoughtful about kind of in a way kind of guiding myself and the President's Council of how best to communicate and interact with students on these topics. So I think today's opportunity for me to share with you directly what's being shared with faculty and staff. And I think let's keep our goal to be keep the communication channel very clear and to make sure that you understanding. So basically the top line news this morning was a three-part announcement. Sorry, just so it's about three actions. The first action is based on MICA's enrollment impact during the pandemic times. Two small incoming classes coming in, and then also a fairly small class last fall 2022. And when you have an undergraduate population of 4-year, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, you have 3 small classes. Effectively, you become a smaller residential college. It doesn't lessen the commitment for us to BFA education, to your experience. As a matter of fact, in all communications, we emphasize first is we actually, all the decisions that you're going to hear are about preserving actually the excellence and also the education you're going to receive. So have no fear about that. So the number one is just to call out the fact that we are in fact now a smaller residential college. So we have a technical term within the faculty handbook called change enrollment circumstances. So we evoked that and basically announced that the administration and the board, per the faculty handbook, have looked at all the facts, and we are declaring a state of change enrollment circumstances. And then the second one is that because of the change enrollment circumstances, we're becoming a smaller residential college, not just because of reacting to last 3 years, but also looking ahead at national, international trends about enrollment. Many of you may or may not have heard. I mean, this is a little geeky for admissions and for higher education administrators, but it is they're very well reported and well recorded for a long time. There is a, for higher education sector, there's a term called a 2026 enrollment cliff. And basically looking at all the birth rates, you can kind of see how many people were born each year. And then about 2026, there's a fairly steep and lasting drop about college entrance age, high school students going to college. So for a traditional college age entity like MICA, most of you are, pretty much high school. We have actually undergraduate students who are more mature, but most of our students are straight from high school. So colleges and universities across the country are dealing with that fact. So based on the last 3 years and looking ahead, it's actually smarter for MICA to acknowledge that fact and not pretend that we can say, oh, things will be great, just like pre-pandemic. Let's kind of just acknowledge and plan ourselves to be a smaller, smarter college that really can focus on the excellence education our students can receive. But because MICA was built with faculty and staff and kind of services, etc., for a bigger entity, there needs to be some adjustment. So the second piece of the announcement today is that MICA is going to go through a resizing or right sizing, and that involves a workforce reduction. But at MICA, we want to do it in a way that even though it's not welcome news to our staff and faculty, we want to do it in a way that provide people with some choice and some agency. So the first step is actually a voluntary separation program. And then if not enough people take the voluntary program because they are at the life phase, is actually ready for them to leave and do something else, then we will actually consider an involuntary. And that's the traditional term of like layoff, but that will be later on. Our hope is that to accomplish as much of the kind of workforce adjustment in size through the workforce, the voluntary program first. And because MICA is a unionized environment, the full-time faculty unionized, our part-time faculty has been unionized for some years now, the staff unionized, there is a very fair and open and transparent process of working with the union to determine the terms of the voluntary program. So we have to respect that process. So it would take some weeks, if not a couple months, to really work with union on those terms. And then after that, they'll be offered and people will need to take time to consider. So basically the voluntary part is going to take the next probably 2 to 3 months to unfold. And then the involuntary part hopefully will be minimum, but if it happens, will be after that. So that's the second part of the announcement today. And the third part announcement actually probably in a long-term view is the most important one. It's the one that actually in some way it's the exciting part. The first two parts are not pleasant. The third part is actually exciting. And that's about reimagining and redesigning based on the existing strengths of the MICA education, how we can actually meet your needs, students of today, but also the students that come after you, students of tomorrow's needs. So as we have heard, Tiffany, Colette, and faculty, and I have done actually focus group with students, either because they're graduating or because we have student panels for the board meetings, etc. We hear again and again from the students, like, now our generation want more choices. We want actually be able to mix and match like subject matter, discipline. We like very much, we choose to come to MICA because of the departmental pathways. We give you some structure, but at the same time, you also love MICA and choose to come here because you can minor across the aisles. So we want to actually increase that kind of breaking down the silo. Right now, we still have a lot of silo, even though MICA is probably more flexible than a lot of our peers. We still have like departments that don't have like facilities open to this department or that department. You have to take a course in order to do this. So we are actually going to really seriously looking at making MICA's education a much more open border for students. So you still have your home department, but will you be able to have more choices? And then we also can look at how can we go like experiential learning, so project-based learning of something that many students would like to receive. When we interview students who have gone through like the Upstart Creative Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, they pretty much come and say, there should be some elements of that in the first year because we need to have that exposure. Then those who are interested can pursue it more seriously. Those who are not interested don't need to do it, but everyone should be exposed to it so we don't come to the fourth year and then can experience that, and then suddenly we say we should have done that in the first and second year. So and having been in education many years with students, unless it's experiential and something you can make sense for your project, which you're doing, sometimes these things are just not interesting. So if they're cut and dry and just coming to you as being, oh, these are the skills you should have, this is the courses, it doesn't sink in. So the experiential learning, kind of the interdisciplinary studies, more choices, but still give you kind of a solid pathways, have a community within your department, having a curricular structure that makes sense to you. That's what we're going to move towards. And then also very importantly, MICA really have to think about, and sorry to use a little crass term, but our return on investment for you and your family's investment. I know that you didn't come to MICA because it was vocational school for your first job, but we want to make sure that you have the confidence when you go out to actually knowing how you can use your passion and your skill to translate that into a sustainable professional practice that also give you a meaningful livelihood that you can, pay back your student debt if a student debt, otherwise at least have a confident, comfortable living, and we have to focus on that. And your wellness, and it's no secret that this generation students also coming in, if not you, the next generation, really have a lot of stress and anxiety and wellness issues carry. So MICA have to think about how that can be integrated so we are just not looking at your grades. Your success is really about your academic excellence, your career prospects, not the first job, but your lifelong practice, but also your resilience and your wellness while in school. And it takes a little time to break down, again, the silos and MICAs, but that's what you're doing. So that's reimagination and the redesigning of the kind of program, curriculum, kind of going forward. And that's a task for the faculty, the administration, the staff, the students, and some of our alums. So we will be embarking on that. So those are the three announcements today. I think, Quinn, that's probably sufficient for now. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. So again, today is just sharing with you. There will be, again, Quinn will guide me and also the President's Council what other forum we can have with students so that not only can we answer your questions, we actually get your ideas about how MICA can evolve going forward. So that's it. Okay. Thank you so much.
We do have reserved time for discussion and Q&A, but we do need to also address the academic restructuring program that Sammy mentioned and was also mentioned in our emails and promotional materials. SVA is also discussing as soon as possible, how can we reconvene with students to discuss these changes, which are obviously really significant, and we really need student input on how to best preserve the most important parts of the student experience at MICA. That is of great concern to us and everyone. But I'm going to go over the academic restructuring plan really quickly. And before I really get into it, I think what I need to emphasize the most is that your degree plans as currently enrolled students will not change. These larger shifts in the way that academics will be run at MICA, as I'm going to outline, are going to be rolled out over time. Your requirements and your degree plan will remain mostly the same, as I will address. So, why are we restructuring? Sammy has already sort of addressed some of this, but also there needs to be more equity in the sizes of areas of study. Right now, all of our majors have the same systems in place to manage degree plans and curricula and faculty. Every department has a chair, regardless of if there are 20 students enrolled in the major or 200 plus. So we're going to look at some graphics real quick that also sort of show the decline in the sizes of majors right now. So we are looking right now, the green is people who are in our 4 largest majors in 2023 and what we're projected to be seeing in 2024 with our new, smaller first-year class. So as we can see, there's a bit of a variety in the decrease in enrollment, but it is consistent that there will be less students in these 4 largest majors next year. These are also some of our comparatively smaller majors as compared to illustration, our largest major. As we can see, these majors, interactive arts, architecture, product design, etc., are really significantly smaller than illustration, though they are managed in similar ways. So this is the proposed plan. There will be 7 sort of areas of study and majors. One of those being FYE, which is obviously not a major, but is a large department on campus. So we're looking at animation and game design existing as a major, illustration remaining its own major, graphic design remaining its own major, and then many of these smaller art and design majors being condensed into a sort of GFA program. And that's allowing for what Sammy was talking about, the different sort of avenues for interdisciplinary study. As we've seen from senior surveys that are conducted before graduation, a lot of seniors have expressed that they really appreciated exploring across disciplines and wanted more opportunities to do so. So there is solid information backing up this decision to condense these majors, apart from just financial and structural reasons. Talking about having resources across majors being equitable for reasons, as I've said, about the sizes and the management of majors, it just is more sustainable to have the majors be similar sizes and have these management systems be balanced out a little bit more, equalizing distribution of budget, faculty, and larger programs are very under-resourced right now, and that is a problem that needs to be addressed and is addressed within this restructuring plan. There will also be some requirements so that a department can remain its own standalone department with an 83% enrollment required, and then for a course to run, it needs to be filled 50%. So if a studio course has less than 9 students in it, under these new guidelines, it will no longer be able to run. Next year, currently enrolled students should expect these changes. No change to your major curriculum, this 50% enrollment requirement for courses. Occasionally, if these courses do not have this 50% enrollment requirement met, you will be seeing course substitutions needed to fulfill your major requirements. There will be routine meetings within majors to inform students of future updates to these changes. And there will be curricular reviews to examine requirements of majors to increase, this sort of flexibility within majors. In academic year 24-25, again, your major curriculum will not change. Students might actually gain more interdisciplinary choices within those requirements. For example, if you're a sculpture major, you might be able to choose to have a sculpture thesis or a more interdisciplinary thesis option as we transition towards a more interdisciplinary program. We will also be introducing more flexible requirements, including required professional practice courses in the future beyond academic year of 24 and 25. As I mentioned, these graduating student surveys that we have seen indicate that students are really benefiting from taking courses outside of their major area of study. But I've already said this and I cannot overemphasize this enough. As you've entered this school, more or less signing a contract with the school that you are going to have a certain degree plan and fulfill a certain major, that will remain the same. Illustration majors are still going to graduate with that same degree plan. Fiber majors will still be graduating with that same degree plan. It is as students continue to come into the school that their degree plans will change and there will be, transparency around that as we move forward. So we are now going to be having a Q&A about academic restructuring, and to the best of the ability that questions can be answered, which may be minimally, the announcements that were made today. We have a couple people who will be coming around with microphones. Please be respectful, and we have various administrators who will be coming up to help answer these questions. So, thanks. Okay.
Hi. So you mentioned, I guess the one thing, this is very helpful, by the way. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Kind of laying that out for us. My question about the on there, it said a different name, I think like studio art, that all of these smaller majors are being potentially condensed into. When you say that, does that mean that these majors are being kind of absorbed by GFA, or is this a completely new administration who's going to run this new major? Because my concern is that I don't think GFA as it is now is equipped to handle all of those other things.
Yes, thank you. Tiffany, I think is more equipped than I am to answer that question.
Thanks for the question. And Quinn, thanks so much for that incredible delivery of the restructuring proposal. So I think one of the things that I think I want to re-emphasize that Quinn spoke about, if you're a GFA major now, your program really is not going to be substantially different next year or the year after. So just know that. But for future MICA students coming in, we have several programs in the fine arts that are quite interdisciplinary, but they don't really have enough students coming to support individual programs, if I can be honest. So next year, and we might even get it started this year, I'll be putting together a task force of faculty, and I hope we can ask a student to sit on it as well, because your opinion really is important here, to develop a flexible, interdisciplinary, choose your own pathway kind of a major that will require the reinvention of GFA. And that's the honest answer. Degree programs that are are in the purview of the faculty. So this task force would be making a proposal to our academic affairs committee of the faculty. The vetting process can take up to a year. And any new degree, we also have to make sure our state accreditation agencies approve as well. So it will take some time, but we do want to be highly consultative with the student body about this process.
We also have a lot of questions occurring in the Zoom chat. So I think what I'm going to have to do is, for the most part, be alternating between questions of people in person and questions in the chat. Let's see. So there's a couple that I can answer myself. One being, is video game design being merged with animation? No. Is that a new change? Yes. There will be they will be existing under one departmental management system, but they will still be distinct programs, which is what we're looking at. Another question that I can pretty much answer is, why are some majors that have nothing to do with fine arts being merged with GFA? It's not, what we're looking at is that it's going to become a more interdisciplinary fine arts and design program. It's not that GFA is going to be absorbing like product design. It's that we're going to be looking at a program that includes product design and design as well as fine arts, where students can have a more customizable program within those majors. Audience question.
We already have someone with a mic.
Yes. Sorry, the mics take a sec. But we do request that you not speak without a mic so that everyone can hear you properly. So we're clear.
I can change here real quick.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. I have two questions. First, like, what percentage of the staff is going to be laid off or asked to leave? And then the second question is, how is it going to affect the classes offered? Because there's all of these majors that are getting combined into one. And so how is that going to affect like the course offerings for those majors?
So, hi, to answer your question, the course offerings will look very similar next year as they do this year. And that would be AY fall 23, spring 24. I think you will see very similar looking offerings 24, 25. It'll take us at least a year to kind of build a new program. So I wouldn't anticipate too many differences. I would say that if you're in a course and you're enrolling for something, we do need 9 or more students in a class to run. So if you're in a class, and I think this really has to do with the kind of student experience we want for you as well. We want you to have that kind of peer experience as well. We want you to have people in the class with you. That's the one area where I think if there are majors, IA, for example, interactive arts, right now it could change, does not have any rising sophomores that have declared IA as a major. But we all know that classes like creative coding, class I used to teach when I was in the faculty ranks, is so important to student understanding now. So we will continue to offer classes that attract students that are very, very meaningful to the student experience. I also want to address one quick thing, the question about why is product design listed under GFA. Art and design practices are becoming a nexus of creative activity. There is less and less this hard line between fine art and design. And I would argue that 3D prototyping, being able to design a 3D model, is something that is a highly desirable skill across the fine arts and the design sector. So this will be part of our conversation on the task force about how do we deliver the correct kinds of skill set and teaching that is really appropriate for the students that are coming to us today.
Thank you. I would also like to apologize for being up on stage looking at my phone. That is how I'm receiving the questions in the Zoom chat, which I'm about to open up right now. And there are a lot of Zoom chat questions. while I skim through those, can we get an audience question? The question being that there was another part to the question asking how much of a loss in terms of exiting staff and faculty there will be, if you could give an idea of that.
So the honest answer is we don't know. We are hoping to make sure that some of the voluntary separations on both the faculty and the staff side of the house give us numbers for consideration. We would like to have more voluntary than involuntary separations, but unfortunately, what does voluntary versus involuntary mean? So, for example, if you have a faculty member who has been teaching for 40 years, they may be thinking about retirement. Does that make sense? So the faculty handbook outlines a process for a faculty member to retire and separate from MICA. The administration, working with the union, will be designing a very attractive package that a faculty member may want to say to themselves, well, I've been thinking about retirement, maybe this year is the year. That would be a voluntary separation from the school, a retirement. And that is true for some staff too, who have, 40 plus years of experience in at MICA. And if I'm not answering the question, please clarify. No problem.
So can we get a mic on one of these questions, please? For accessibility reasons, we need to be speaking on a microphone.
Okay, right here, right here.
Okay.
that's fine.
Dabbling into your voluntary separation program, is future MICA going to technically work backwards in a sense of looking to acquire professors that can teach, for example, a architect professor that needs to be able to teach and critique a photography-based thesis, knowing that you're combining disciplinary actions?
So if you can fast forward to the MICA of the future, that large interdisciplinary area on the slide, there would be probably 300 or 400 students in that area if we're able to obtain some enrollment recovery. Imagine, if you will, 10 different thesis classes listed that might be taught by different professors. 5 years from now, MICA seniors might be selecting their professors for their thesis class. The thesis classes could be theme-based. There is all manner of creative ways we could deliver a thesis class. I think the question about photography, if the photography of the future doesn't have 9 students that can enroll in a dedicated thesis class, it may be there would be a lens-based practices thesis. That's often how photography, film, and video practices are bundled at other schools. So I could see that being a logical way to orient a thesis class. I will also say that many of these decisions need to be discussed on the task force, but please know that you're not going to be dropped into a thesis class with the professor that doesn't have subject matter expertise in your arena of study. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to this now. Who has hands here?
This is sort of a similar question to the one asked before it, but I'm a little confused how, if you're combining all of these majors under a larger major, with the anticipation that funding will be lower, how is the quality of education supposed to remain the same, especially considering we're already seeing sort of a degradation of the quality of our classes, just in terms of like quantity of figure models. Like, I mean, I can't speak for other majors, but it just doesn't really track. Thank you.
This is one reason why we're here, to hear from you. I don't necessarily see any difference between what's happening this year in terms of your coursework, in terms of what's happening next year. The figure models is a very particular specific area of concern that I can address. I want to be respectful. Maybe you and I can talk afterwards unless the group wants to hear the explanation. Yes. Okay. So the figure models had a raise, and the MICA budget that holds the comp for the figure models didn't increase. To make matters more complex, there is a class on the books called Life Drawing that has 7 different sections. I recently reviewed the syllabi for all of the sections. They're all taught a little bit differently, and faculty use different numbers of hours for each model. So there's not parity between any of the classes. We are working to set up a system where each instructor will be assigned a number of hours with the model that will be equitable, that every class will essentially have access to the same number of models. I'm also working right now to figure out money from my budget to allow for a second model to be hired for the classes that remain after spring break. Thank you for the question. I've heard a lot about this particular issue.
Hello.
I'm gonna, sorry, I don't want to you will be next. I just real quick need to address a question or have a question addressed from the Zoom chat, which is as follows. Are there any changes in terms of tuition, dorm fee, and scholarships for current students?
So the question is, scholarships, MICA advancement is always raising money for more scholarships. Sammy, I don't know if you want to address that one in particular. Tuition increase. Every year, the MICA board agrees on a tuition increase. Typically, this is not unlike any of our ACAD colleges. I would invite Sammy and Martin if they want to come up and say more about that. I would also remind everybody that in a private art and design school, their class size is very low and access to equipment and so forth is fairly plentiful, although I want to hear your perspective on that. This is an incredibly expensive education to provide, and we want to make sure are resourcing it appropriately and looking at systemic ways to allocate our resources fairly and equitably, while understanding that there are differences between disciplines.
So Tiffany, since you asked Martin and myself to answer the question about tuition raise, let me share that with you. Actually, it's kind of like advance notice, but it's okay. I just checked with Martin. It's around this time that the Board of Trustees, after hearing the analysis and recommendation, actually sets the tuition fees and raise for next year. So just remind everyone, MICA's traditionally for the last 7-8 years since I arrived at MICA has actually stayed a very steady course, so make it predictable. So before it was 3.5, and then it was 3.4 last year and 3.4 this year. Next year will be 2.5. So that will be announced and shared out. So it has gone down a bit. I know that, for family and students, you want to see it even more, but also please understand that actually inflation is much higher than 2.5. So we are doing as much as we can to keep it reasonable. So actually it's less than this year, less than last year, and also it's really less than inflation. So it's 2.5 is that will be announced.
Hi. Sorry, can we get the question of the person that I accidentally cut
Hi.
off real quick?
Hi.
Yeah, yeah.
With Board of Trustees, including Sammy Hoy, getting about like $250,000 to $500,000 a year, I think a lot of students are worried about with these staff layoffs, these people increasing their salaries without giving that money back to the student or back to the staff that they plan on rehiring, or like not paying them health insurance or tenure, et cetera, et cetera. I think these are the students that, these are the questions that we want answered. Will the new hires be paid?
Sorry, who would be? Sorry. Sorry, can I just to make sure that we're answering the question properly, can I make sure that I understand your question?
Like new hires after layoffs, not
Yeah.
receiving the same benefits as our past teachers or the past professors and staff that you've laid off,
Yeah, so
as well as the Board of Trustees getting an increase in salaries despite really large budget cuts.
so you're let me just make sure I understand. So what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're asking if not, why new hires may not be getting appropriate pay, compensation, or benefits in spite of higher up individuals receiving the amount of money that they're currently receiving.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. We will have Martin answer that.
Nope. All right, there. So great question. A clarifying point. So our Board of Trustees members are not paid. Those are volunteer positions. So just as a clarifying point on that. And in terms of wages and working conditions, so what people are paid and their benefits, if they are unionized, those have to be negotiated with the union. So in good faith, any type of packages, benefits, compensation would be negotiated with the union.
So the union is there to protect the working conditions of any hires, new or existing. And a clarifying point that the Board of Trustees is volunteer-based, not compensated.
Correct.
Does that help? I don't know. Yeah or no? Not really. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, whoever's on the mic.
So,
Yeah. Sorry, we've got a lot of questions here and in the chat. We're really doing our best to keep up.
is this on? So, if all of this is being done to reduce and condense or consolidate resources, which is naturally going to result in us having less resources, that's already been the case in past years. Why is the discussion how much to raise tuition and not a possibility of tuition being lowered because we're being offered less? And frankly, the tuition price already is insane. It's much higher than what is offered. So why is the conversation how much to raise it as you're standing up here and telling us about all the things we won't have next year?
Yeah, okay. Whoever is best suited to answer that. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks for the question. It's a tough one. What I'm hearing from you is, what's my return on investment for my tuition dollars at MICA? That's what I'm hearing. I think it would be helpful for those of us in the President's Council to know more about where resources are falling for you. I feel like I spent the last year and a half increasing the hours of individuals who supervise and work in MICA's shops, for example. I feel like I knew about the figure model kind of problem. That's something we're working on a solution for. But in the space of this meeting, my email is tholmes@mica.edu. It would be great to hear some specific examples of resource degradation or diminished resources as you're describing. Now, the other part of your question, we are not we're reducing faculty and some staff lines through voluntary and involuntary, perhaps reductions. But we have a smaller number of students, and we are a tuition-driven private institution. We have very, very large programs. Do you remember the bar graph that Quinn showed of the illustration program versus the, thank you. The bar graph that shows the illustration program versus some of the other smaller programs. Some of our larger programs have been in need of greater resources for many, many years. And this moment calls for a rebalancing of some of the resources based on where the student selections are. That's the hard work of the next couple of months. Thanks for the question, though. It's a tough one.
I would also like to add that in this time of restructuring, changing circumstances, and clearly there's a lot of questions, concerns, and feedback from students, we at SVA are always, always, always wanting your feedback. We have committees, we have elections coming up, which I'll talk about at the end. And our inbox is always open, sva@mica.edu. We are here to get these questions heard in town hall, in President's Council's meetings. Thank you for your questions. And I just want to say, if we don't get to your question, if your question is not fully answered, if something needs longer term follow-up, we check that email. Many of us in SVA will be checking and replying to emails. And it's extremely important in these really big times of transition that are really frightening sometimes, that we're getting feedback to make sure that the student experience is the best it can possibly be. Without feedback from students, we can't do that. So that's really a vital part of this process, is continuing to receive feedback. We can be advocating for students on these focus groups in these rooms, making sure that needs are being met. So I just want to re-emphasize that. Can I get another question? Yeah.
Is that okay? First, I just want to say thank you, Quinn, and everyone at SVA for hosting this. Y'all are doing a great job running mics around.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Oh yeah, sorry. Thanks. Thank you for clapping. You'll be clapping in my heart.
I have a couple of questions, mostly about the smallest majors. So earlier, I think Tiffany said that GFA, you won't expect to see a big change in the next year or so. I'm a ceramics major. I'm in one of the smallest 6 majors.
Yeah.
So nothing was said about what kind of changes we can expect in the next coming years before our graduation.
Yeah. So I am also in a very small major, so I definitely understand your concern. Your degree plan will remain mostly intact, so what your requirements are will remain the same. If classes do not meet the 9-person, or it might be a little lower in ceramics because class capacity is smaller, I actually don't know off the top of my head. If 50% enrollment is not made, a course substitution may be necessary because the class will be unable to run. As for thesis, it looks like you will have the option, to the best of my knowledge, to do a ceramics thesis as long as there are, I'll have Tiffany clarify on your thesis, but that more interdisciplinary options will be made available to you, and course substitutions may occasionally become necessary as courses are not meeting capacity, but that you will still be graduating as a ceramics major with a degree in ceramics. Same goes for any other small major that students are currently enrolled in, with the understanding of occasional course substitutions and possibly the opportunity for more expanded options. Is that right? Okay.
I did have, I'm not quite sure where the funding for the competitive scholarships comes for, whether that's donors or from the school directly, but either way, how are competitive scholarships going to work with the formation of larger majors?
Yeah, yes, sorry. I was just checking to see who was going to be answering that, which I believe Martin. Oh. Sorry. So we will answer that.
Roderick Jenkins, Associate Vice President, Financial Aid. There won't be any change in your scholarships, number one, with the restructuring. As far as the competitive scholarship program, the larger majors, they get more scholarships to allocate, but each department will retain scholarships. But there won't be any change in the restructuring. It just increases the, excuse me, it just increases the scholarships for the larger departments.
Okay.
But no change in your scholarships with the restructuring plan. I know that was asked earlier, but no difference, no change. The scholarships that we offered you, that you accepted when you came to MICA, they will remain intact.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, like the scholarships that are in the ceramics department specifically will remain there and not part of that larger umbrella for competitive scholarships.
For the individuals who are currently enrolled in ceramics.
Yeah, competitive scholarship. If you're in a competition this year, that doesn't change, right?
Does it change in the following years?
Next year, if you, part of the restructuring, the larger department, so GFA becomes larger, GFA gets more scholarships to allocate. Now, how those scholarships are distributed, whether 5 go to ceramics, 2 go to interactive arts, that's going to be a committee, the scholarship committee decision. But GFA, by virtue of becoming a larger department, they get more money, more scholarship money to award to students.
So as what I'm understanding is that as departments gradually become smaller departments become part of larger departments, the way that these scholarships are currently allocated is that each department gets a certain number of competitive scholarships, and as those departments become part of larger departments, that's where those scholarships will become absorbed into those larger departments. It sounds like it's a little bit up in the air right now when exactly that's going to happen, if I'm not mistaken. But at the very least, we can say this year, if you applied for a competitive scholarship in ceramics, that will not be changed. As circumstances change, it's hard to say right now exactly how and when those allotments will change. But we know for certain that this year they are not changing. I'm sorry that I can't answer for the future. Thank you.
Hi,
Yeah.
hi, thanks SVA. I just wanted to speak to something that was in the letter about restructuring that Sammy wrote that Michael Patterson shared with us earlier.
Sorry, about restructuring or about the change in staffing and layoffs?
It's listed under the hard truth and necessary evolution. So I guess
I'll pull that up.
yeah. Basically, you write that this 2026 enrollment cliff that's well forecasted and this quote public questioning of traditional degree credential are 2 key factors in driving the volatile and changing landscape of higher education. And I think this is true, but it's also like a big red flag to me that the big factor that is like the cause of these 2 factors is not being addressed, which is like an economic factor, that we are in a recession and colleges are so fucking expensive, and like people are questioning the traditional degree credential because of that. And so this is echoing some of the other questions, but like we're talking about how resources are distributed. I know you're asking for examples, but a lot of us are feeling like we're getting less resources. I've been here for 4 years. I certainly feel that. I can give you some examples later on if you really need them. And yeah, like we're paying so much money, and all of the administrators, this was kind of asked earlier, all of the administrators have massive paychecks. I know that is not up to you. I've been told at other town halls that, you know, that's the way that colleges do it. We're following our peers. I've also been told by Sammy that we need to be change makers.
Mm.
So I just want to know, like, are any of the people in power at this institution suffering at all? Not suffering, I'm sorry, that's an intense word to use, but are you guys seeing, are your paychecks getting dinged at all because of this restructuring? Like, are
Hmm.
what are you having to give up because of this? Because you're putting a bunch of, I mean, there's so many students who don't come here because of how much it costs. You're putting, this is a beautiful community of professors and stuff, and now a lot of them are gonna have to leave. What are you,
Yeah.
what material like changes are happening to you guys as well? What sacrifices are you making
Yeah.
given how much you get out of this institution?
Can I make sure we're answering the right question?
Yeah.
Just okay. So my understanding is what you're asking is that the community is really suffering right now. The professors are suffering, students are suffering a lot of losses, and that
Yeah.
what sacrifices is this administration making in response to that?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
specifically around
Finances?
finances.
Okay.
And the resource distribution in this institution.
Okay.
Thank you for asking questions. We also. No, thank you for asking like very honest, direct questions. We appreciate that. So I think we really try to administration try to want to equity participate in whatever decision that's made or sacrifices according to the principles at hand. So allow me to explain what it meant. So when we about 3 years ago during the height of pandemic, we had furlough, we had actually salary pay reductions across the board. Faculty is voluntary, staff was not voluntary, and we had also voting benefits. Not only did all the administrators participate, but we have a sliding scale. So actually the higher paid people get more percentage reduced in the salary, etc. Myself and the provost at that time, Tiffany is interim provost, our provost at the time, we want to kind of lead by example. We had the biggest pay, so we took about 25%, a combination between furlough and salary reduction. And it was, and then I think the scale was somewhere between, we spare everyone making 60,000 and below. We didn't actually have any cut at all. And then from that on, it's about maybe 3% all the way up to 25%. And then myself and the vice presidents took the higher cuts. We're in the kind of 10 to 20, 25 range. So right now, we don't have a program that look at actually pay cuts. And that's why at this point, we are not considering pay cuts. If there's a pay cut program, I assure you, I'll be the highest one to take a pay cut, and all the seniors. So, and let me allow just to answer fully, and then during this last summer when we had the first round of just staff kind of restructuring, you all know we had about like 14 staff positions, about 6 unstaffed positions that were cut. My office area, I cut by 50%, and we lost actually 1 VP position at that time. So we do actually try to look at the system that's being implemented and do this. I wouldn't call it a sacrifice. I think just the kind of equitable participation in those systems according to the principle. So I know that in a situation where we are discussing, workforce reduction, I think there is a kind of thinking to say, let's kind of go to the fat cats and how you're kind of suffering and sacrifice. But I just want to explain that we do according to what's being implemented, the principles at hand, and participate according to the principles. So yeah, thank you.
One moment, please. First of all, we got a really quick question in the Zoom chat that I can answer like fast and easy, which is that will these departments like animation that are, remaining relatively intact during the consolidation of majors be getting more money? Yes. I mean, the answer is yes. These large majors that are going to be intact, the reason that we are creating these larger majors is so that departments are getting money and the money that they need to run properly and appropriately. Just wanted to answer that real fast, real quick. follow-up question? Yeah?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you, Sammy. I appreciate the answer, and I didn't know that about that program over the pandemic. And forgive me, I don't remember the exact language you used, but you said if someone like instituted that kind of thing now, that you would be interested. Who does that? Who has who why aren't, you know, like that seems like it should be a priority with all of this talk about resources and stuff to get on
Sure.
having that program be part of this restructure.
Yeah. The program I mentioned was actually across the board. So, and I think right now, that's what the lesson learned during the pandemic is that I mean, this is not just about the senior team. This is really about everyone. With staff, it's in economic hardship time, and we're still kind of part of that. Anything that impacts people's pay and benefits really actually become more painful than actually looking at the structural kind of fix. So what we are proposing today or announced today is really a deep structural fix. And I mentioned during the a meeting is just rip the Band-Aid out rather than looking at a unsustainable situation, finding kind of temporary solutions that actually make everyone feel better, but ultimately really doesn't do anyone any favor. So so that's what I meant by that. But in as far as who makes the decision regarding kind of across the board, kind of pay cut, furlough, that would be a mostly administrative kind of decisions. But we decided it's just not the right way to go right now. So
I
So-
guess
Sorry, we have a lot of other questions and we have,
it doesn't
20
feel great to be told you're gonna like lose your job and that
of course
boss
not.
isn't seeing anything. So I think that should have been considered in this announcement.
No one, and I agree with you, no one is happy about this. I should it sucks. So I'm just gonna say that. Maybe I'm not supposed to be saying that up here on this podium, but I'm going to. But unfortunately, we do need to answer more questions. I can also say we can completely keep talking about academic restructuring. We can also, we know that there are people here who are also here to ask other kinds of questions. We have 24 minutes left. We're going to do our best to answer any questions you have about this, about other topics and issues. Yeah. Audience question.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
so I'm a photography major and I'm a sophomore now, so I have another 2 years projected to still be here. And as a smaller major, and I know that classes are going to be cut according to the size of enrollment.
Right.
How am I going to be assured by MICA, considering the amount I'm paying, that I will be able to have all of the skills acquired by the end of my time here that I need if faculty is being cut, classes are being cut, and potentially funding will be cut for the smaller departments?
Yeah.
And
that-
the department managers.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll speak a little bit to that, and also I think Tiffany or Colette or someone else will also speak to that. When we talk about course substitutions for some of these requirements, we're not talking about you can take intro to fiber to substitute your core photography requirement. These course substitutions will be, to the best of my understanding, ensured to still fulfill the requirements and skills that you need to be building for your major. Which is not to say that it's perfect or ideal, but that's the solution that we're looking at. I think that,
And then, sorry,
yeah.
what exactly is also being prioritized in being cut? So how many people from each department are going to be cut? If it's let's say there's a lot of elders in a certain department that are ready to retire and they all decide to leave, how is the rehiring going to work? How many people are going to be left in each department so that we have the resources that we were promised? And facility.
Thanks so much for the question. And it's great to hear your question as a sophomore, rising junior next year. You will be graduating with a photography major according to the academic catalog that you came in on. So we are here just to re-emphasize that again and again for the freshmen who are here, the second years, the third years, you are going to be graduating with the curriculum that you came in on. I know a little bit about photography, and I know studio lighting, for example, is one of the more popular skill-based classes. That's a class that always fills. I think if you think back to the thesis conversation we were having before, we've been dealing with smaller thesis across these programs for many, many years. And what we've asked faculty to do, in some programs, I know this is true for ceramics, students take the thesis class for 6 credits. But we have a kind of informal recommendation that if a faculty member teaches a class that's lower than 8, they teach it for 3 credits of compensation because they have less than half the number of students, less than half the number of critiques, et cetera, et cetera. So we will be working with your faculty to ensure that your degree pathway is exactly as that academic catalog defined. I think the other thing that is maybe too much information to go into here is that I don't think, without the bird's eye view that we see, some of the departments have what we call special, restricted, endowed budgets. Photography has one of those that allows photography to bring a guest to MICA every year to visit with you all and do studio visits, which is a wonderful and lovely thing. That gift is funded by one of our board members. That's not going away, ever. It's an endowed gift to photography.
Well, I understand, sorry, I'm just gonna add one more thing. I understand that aspect of it, but I guess my question is the wide array of skills that photography is like needed for one to be like a good, yeah, I'm gonna graduate as a photography major, but will I have all of the available teachers to teach all, like, yeah, studio lighting is one, but will the rest of the smaller courses be available, the alternative methods of photography?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And I think some of the, alternative processes classes that you're mentioning, we've moved this year. I don't know if this is known to the students, but we've moved to year-round course scheduling. So department chairs are currently working on their schedules. They've turned in their schedules for fall of 2023 and spring of 2024. We want you as students to be able to see the entire schedule for the year, so you know what's being offered when, and you can plan your schedule accordingly.
Thank you.
As someone who's from the GFA major, I'm just wondering, like, why? Oh, no, as someone who's from the GFA, as part of the GFA major and knows what it's like, and knows like between like how fine art compared versus things like illustration, animation. I'm just wondering why, like why the decision to put like pretty much every other major that wasn't like illustration, animation, graphic design under GFA, because I know GFA is like extremely different from like product design, for example. Like how a professional development for a product design class is completely different from a GFA class.
Yeah.
It doesn't belong there at all, if I'm being very, very honest.
Well, can I jump in on this? GFA is, when we talk about restructuring, what we're looking at in that department is a different sort of program that is allowing for, yes, a generalized fine arts education within what is of interest to students, in the same way that GFA allows you to sort of pick and choose to a degree what is of interest to you, but also allowing for a more generalized, or in some cases specific, design education. So it's sort of going to be based on what students are interested in on an individual level, both a generalized fine arts education and or a design education, in the same way that someone in GFA can really load up their schedule with drawing or painting or even illustration or animation courses, to the best of my understanding. As someone who's not in GFA, there will also now be sort of a design equivalent to that within one program, allowing for that sort of interdisciplinary study. Also, I'm really sorry to say this, but we can't really do follow-ups right now. Email us, get in the Zoom chat. We're saving those questions to respond to, and we're going to really try to continue to address these things. But unfortunately, like, we have a lot of questions we need to move through in the next 15 minutes. I'm sorry.
Can I just offer that a lot of those smaller departments in the longer arc of history of MICA, interactive arts and fiber originated within GFA many, many years ago. And when we had the faculty sessions around the restructure, there is a ton of excitement and energy around thinking about how to plan more curriculum together. Students will choose their own pathways. So if you choose a fine arts pathway, that's what you're going to get. And I also just want to continuously remind people, for you all who are sophomores, juniors, and seniors, I'm not seeing a lot of changes right now on the horizon for you.
Real quick, I'm going to address a great question in the Zoom chat, which is asking if there's any way that we could voice or shout out the professors that have positively experienced or positively impacted our experience at MICA. We would love that. I don't know who asked that question because all I see on my end is the question, but like, yes, we would love to. Let us know. Like, yes, we would love to hear that. Professors would love to hear that. We'd love to work maybe with our social media to do that, because our professors work really hard and deserve that recognition, especially in these like really difficult times. So yes, email us about professors that you love and we'll make that known. Audience question? Yeah, okay.
I have a question. I'll make this quick. I have a question about like the sort of like financial aid sort of thing, because I know that they said they aren't going to change tuition anytime soon for this year and about 2 years along the line upcoming students. But do you think it would be fair to have some sort of like relief aid or relief fund for students that are upcoming or going into their sophomore or fall 2023 to 2024 year? Because I noticed that these cuts are like pretty major, and it's going to take a lot from us as students to like come into this school, since it's like 60 grand a year, or depending on I know tuition is different for each and everybody, but like on bottom line, 60 grand a year, and there's a lot of like less income students that are coming here with a lot of, you know, financial aid, and some even like some rides, or yeah, depending on like what they've done with MICA, like there's some of that, but it can only handle so much until like, you know, the cost comes up and people that we need in certain departments or in certain majors that are being merged into one thing. Like I think that's taking a lot. And I just want to know if there's going to be any sort of like relief or financial relief for students.
Sorry, one moment. Martin, sorry, I'm not equipped to answer this. But it appears that Sophia, can you give Martin the mic, please?
Collectively. So there is certainly a need to focus on affordability and accessibility, particularly for students, right, who are coming to MICA with additional need. That's something that we're aware of. It's part of our financial restructuring plan, is to get as streamlined in our operations so we can redirect and invest in areas that support the student experience. And so I'll turn it to DeRoderick to talk about some of that.
So part of the scholarship and financial aid budget, we do realize that there will be an increase in cost. So students are able to meet with their counselor, and you can provide a financial aid appeal. You know, we kind of have two processes, one for domestic students, one for international students, and for good reason. As a domestic student, you're eligible for federal aid. As an international student, you're primarily limited. So any student that's having a financial hardship, email your financial aid counselor. We'll work with you on an individual basis because all students' situations and circumstances are different. But we'll do our very best to try to assist you, but you have to reach out to us or reach out to one of my counselors, and we'll discuss your circumstances and situation and see how we can help you best.
Thank you. Okay, so unfortunately, we do only have time for like one, maybe two more questions. And at the end, I'm going to like tell you how to get your concerns addressed beyond this town hall, but for right now, one, maybe two. Does anyone have a mic? Yes, go ahead.
All right. So basically, I've been hearing throughout this a lot of stuff like, oh, for the next few years, it won't be changed for you guys. I'm not just advocating for myself.
Of course.
I'm advocating for the future of this institution and all the students that are going to be coming here, because they are the people who are going to keep this institution alive going forward. And that's the same institution that's always going to be on my degree. I don't want to have to go pay another $200,000 for another education to have on my degree. I want this one, and I want it to be good. I want to be able to say I graduated from here in 2025 and 2040, like 20 years from now, and be proud of it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm concerned about is when I came here, I chose to come here over some school like SAIC, which does a large thing like this with the GFA kind of thing. I came here even though they gave me a lot more scholarship money, because there was a selling point here. And I'm sorry, the school does not have the same endowment or resources that SAIC has, being in a larger city and all those selling points. I don't know if I would have come here if they were just doing the exact same thing as SAIC. You guys would not have been able to afford me compared to SAIC. I would have gone. I really would have.
Okay.
And if we don't have students continuing to come here in the future with that same selling point, we're going to lose even more money. And I don't think this is a good direction for the institution. You need to hone in on the selling points of this institution, not some other institution like SAIC. Period.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Again, no clapping, Zoom, sorry. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your energy. You should probably like run for SVA, honestly. You're a very good speaker.
Yes. Can I answer that?
Yeah,
real
yeah, go
quickly?
ahead.
Thanks so much for your question. I lived in Chicago and worked at SAIC for 18 years. So believe me, I know the institution, and I'm also a very proud MICA alum. And I too want the school to have a clear niche message, marketing kind of a conviction that we can bring students in who want to come here for the right reasons, as you did. I don't think we have time for this discussion today, but I just talked to my colleague Colette, and we think there may be some confusion. We're not trying to make ourselves into SAIC. We do think there is an opportunity for a new major that offers a choice-based pathway with a faculty advisor. But I don't think what that means is we're giving up photo or we're giving up GFA. I think this is a longer kind of discussion on the task force, and I want to reiterate how amazing SVA has done today with conducting this kind of info session. I hope we can have more opportunities for dialogue like this, but I really hope we can get student representation on some of these curricular task forces, because your opinion and your voices matter. You are the reason why we're here. It's really, really important to acknowledge that. And we very much appreciate all of the input and questions today.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, people have class, we really can't take any more questions at this exact moment. But let me just really emphasize right now. We have, first of all, we have an email, sva@mica.edu. I believe all 5 of us look at this email very frequently. We look at your emails, we discuss them, we answer them, we address them. Email us anytime anything comes up. We've gotten emails about pretty much everything you can possibly imagine at this school, and we do our best to address them. We have committees to join. We have elections coming up for our SVA like executive council. There's going to be a lot of information about that coming out soon. Thank you so much for coming. We really want to keep hearing your feedback. I'm really, really sorry we couldn't answer everyone's question as much as we wanted to. We always want to talk to you. Thank you for coming. Have a good rest of your day. You want to organize monthly?